You're right to be concerned about what's happening in the Middle East. The death of Hezbollah's leader has really thrown things into chaos. This Washington Post article you sent me, well, it's got some seriously concerning stuff about a potential ground war between Hezbollah and Israel. Let's dive right into this. What's the latest?
Well, right now, it's incredibly tense, really. Israel is launching these airstrikes inside Lebanon, and it seems like both sides are gearing up, maybe even preparing for a possible ground invasion.
And if that wasn't enough, this quote from Hezbollah's deputy leader, Naim Qassem, really stuck with me. The article quotes him saying, "We know that the battle might be long. We are prepared and ready." And the fact that he said this from some undisclosed location, that's got to mean something, don't you think?
It definitely speaks volumes. I mean, on the surface, it seems like Hezbollah, even after such a huge loss with Nasrallah's death, wants to project this image of strength. Like they're trying to show they're defiant. They're telling Israel, we won't back down easily, even if this drags on. But there's another audience here, the Lebanese people. It's like they're preparing them too, managing expectations, trying to shore up that internal support. It's classic, really, this psychological warfare when faced with so much uncertainty.
Okay, so that explains the tough talk. But what about this Israeli airstrike in Beirut? I mean, the article said it's the first one right in the city since everything escalated. What's the significance of hitting Beirut directly?
This isn't just about hitting a location. It's about the message it sends. Beirut is at the heart of Lebanon. It's the political center, the cultural hub, and home to millions. By striking here, Israel is escalating the conflict significantly. It's a risky move.
Risky how?
Well, for one, striking Beirut like this increases the risk of civilian casualties, which could turn international opinion even further against Israel. And that's not to mention that this could very well unite the Lebanese population against Israel, even those who've been critical of Hezbollah in the past. It's a dangerous, dangerous gamble.
And it's just heartbreaking to think about the human cost.
Yeah.
The article mentioned casualties and people being displaced. It's easy to get lost in the military strategy of it all, but these are real people at the heart of this.
You're absolutely right. I mean, behind every headline, every strategic maneuver are countless individual stories. Stories of loss, displacement, and trauma. We can't lose sight of that human cost, even as we analyze this conflict and the geopolitical implications.
So we've got Hezbollah talking tough and Israel upping the ante with this Beirut strike. And on top of all of this, there's this looming question of a potential ground invasion. The article mentions the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, are amassing troops right on the border, and Hezbollah is claiming that they're ready for a ground fight. Are we on the precipice of a full-blown ground war?
It's the big question, isn't it? And unfortunately, there are no easy answers here. Right now, we're seeing what could be real preparations for a ground invasion, or it could all be a strategic game of chicken. Both sides want to project strength, even if they're not sure about actually taking that next step.
So how do we read between the lines here? What are the experts saying about a ground invasion actually happening?
Well, military analysts are divided. There are some who believe that Israel might feel like they have to launch a ground offensive, to eliminate the threat of Hezbollah's rockets in those tunnels, especially after this latest escalation. Their thinking is that Israel can't appear weak or indecisive, not in the face of Hezbollah's defiance.
But wouldn't a ground war be risky for Israel as well? I mean, we'd be talking about fighting a guerrilla force on their home turf in really densely populated areas.
Exactly, and that's what makes all of this so volatile. A ground war, it wouldn't be a quick victory for either side. Hezbollah has spent years digging in, building up their weapons, and they've been honing their urban warfare tactics. They'd be fighting among civilians, which makes it incredibly difficult for the IDF to target them without causing a lot of collateral damage. It would be a long, drawn-out, incredibly bloody conflict with terrible consequences for everyone.
This all sounds eerily similar to past conflicts in the region.
It's a very real possibility, and it has everyone on edge. But let's not forget, a ground invasion isn't the only factor. Remember earlier you mentioned Hezbollah claiming they're seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. That detail adds another layer, really complicates things.
Right, toward the end of the article there was, Hezbollah is claiming that their goal right now is to secure a ceasefire in Gaza. They're saying this isn't about starting a full-blown war with Israel, just securing a ceasefire in Gaza. But is that believable? Is this Hezbollah trying to downplay their true intentions?
It's possible. It wouldn't be the first time a group used a smaller objective as a smokescreen, a way to mask bigger ambitions. They could be trying to avoid a massive retaliation from Israel. Then again, we can't completely dismiss the possibility that they really do see a ceasefire in Gaza as their primary objective right now. Maybe they recognize that a wider war with Israel isn't what they want, at least not now. It's a calculated risk for sure, no matter how you slice it.
So much uncertainty. How do you even analyze a situation like this, where every action could lead to unintended consequences, even catastrophic ones?
It's definitely a delicate balancing act, and we don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately. But one way to try and make sense of this is to look past just the military actions. We have to dig into the motivations and the constraints of the key players.
Okay, so what are some of those motivations and constraints that are shaping what's happening right now?
Well, for Hezbollah, internal dynamics are a big factor. They've just lost their leader, a charismatic one at that, and their legitimacy in the eyes of some Lebanese people, well, that could be called into question if they back down from a fight with Israel. On the flip side, a war that drags on would be really costly for them. We're talking manpower and resources.
And what about Israel? What are some of the things influencing their decisions?
There's huge pressure on Israel to respond decisively, domestically and internationally. They've got to deter future attacks and keep their standing in the region. But they also have to consider what a ground invasion could cost them, and not just in terms of casualties. They could get bogged down, stuck in a conflict that just drags on and on.
It's a tough position, no easy answers.
Yeah.
And this Washington Post article, it mentioned other things at play here too, right? External factors.
Absolutely. International pressure is a huge factor, a wild card, really. The U.S., for example, they're allies with both Israel and Lebanon. It's a tightrope trying to de-escalate things while supporting Israel's right to defend itself. And then you have Iran backing Hezbollah and Saudi Arabia opposed to them. This conflict could easily draw in other regional powers, and that could have a domino effect across the Middle East and even further.
So many competing interests, potential triggers. How can anyone even try to predict where this is all going?
The million-dollar question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, predicting the future, it's impossible. Too many variables, too many flashpoints that could change everything in an instant. A miscalculation, something unexpected, even just a rumor, it could all escalate incredibly quickly.
It feels like we're watching a powder keg, just waiting to see who strikes the match.
It does feel that way, you're right. But that doesn't mean we're powerless. Understanding how complex this is, the different players and what motivates them, the scenarios that could play out, that knowledge is crucial. It lets us ask the right questions, challenge assumptions, and have real discussions about finding a way forward.
Knowledge is power, they say. And this deep dive has definitely been insightful. Thanks for helping me understand all the angles here. I feel like I've got a much better handle on things.
It's been my pleasure. I'm always glad to talk about these important issues.
And for all of you listening, as we try to make sense of this volatile situation, here's something to think about. Beyond the headlines, beyond the military movements, how might this conflict reshape the Middle East in the long term? How will the geopolitical landscape be redrawn? It's a question worth pondering as we see history unfold right in front of us. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.
Turn the dial to the daily news. Turn the dial to the daily news. Turn the dial to the daily news. Bringing voices, headlines, and shoes. We turn the dial to the daily news.